Hello everyone, welcome to the video. Suspension parts with their various shapes surely look beautiful, and so are all of you out there. A big round of applause for everyone. Here are the major suspension components for the 2300 Accord. New upper control arms, replace the bushings and lower control arm, tie rods, brand new, both inner and outer. Here's what we have with the spindle off and obviously the new items out of the car. So gradually I rebuilt everything, put everything back together. It took me about 3 hours per side because I wasn't very familiar with suspension setup. By the way, this is a double wishbone suspension. The other common suspension type is the McPherson strut type. So I did the inner and outer tie rods, also replaced the bushings on the lower control arm, the compliance bushing and the two other bushings. I didn't have to replace the sway bar end link because it was still in good condition. For the upper control arm, I had to replace the whole arm and not just the ball joint or bushings because they were all bad. I also realized that there were some alignment pins. You can see a dot by the bolt on the right over there for setting the control arm because there's no way you can fit it on without taking out the strut. And it's advisable or recommended to have the suspension fully settled before you tighten all the bushings so to prevent premature failure. So here's where I have everything put together. Like I said, it was quite tedious because I wasn't used to it. It took about 3 hours per side, everything all done. And then I also had to carefully torque all the bolts to prevent sudden failure because these cars are known for having suspension failures if not properly handled. So everything right there, just some of the parts, the ball joints in particular are quite sensitive. I also ensured I used cotter pins to prevent the locking nuts from backing out. So all in all, the job was relatively satisfactory. I'll definitely get a full alignment done in the nearest future. Next, regarding the AC issue I hinted about in the last video, the pipe above that we're looking at right now was the culprit. The joint where the black rubber portion merged onto the aluminum portion was leaking right there where I'm pointing my finger right now. That's the point where it's leaking. I'm not sure if I can get a close-up of the exact leak. So moving closer, I'm not sure we can see bubbles. Yes, I think we can see some bubbles right now. Yes. So that's exactly where the refrigerant was leaking from. So I should have known from the vacuum readings going down that there was a leak. And then the second point where I had a leak was right in front of the condenser where the same pipe connected to the condenser. Right below that pipe, we can see some green substance right there. That was my fault though. I should have replaced the O-ring on there. So my advice to anyone doing air conditioning work, make sure you replace all necessary O-rings to prevent any leaks. So I decided to get the pipe mended. Moving on under the hood of the car, going to open it up right now. I noticed that the car was throwing a P0325 code, and that's for the knock sensor. Going on the forums online, there are two ways you can go about replacing the sensor. Either you gain access from the side of the engine right here, or you take the whole intake manifold right off. I opted to try the simpler method first by taking out the power steering pump, and it worked out fine. So a common issue on these engines is that the wiring harness going to the sensor actually gets brittle and breaks, or you have rodents chewing on the wire. In my case, the wire was missing and the sensor was also broken. probably as a result of all the intense heat going on in the valley of the engine. So I got a used sensor and harness, and I'll be installing that. Next, while working on this side of the engine, I noticed that the tensioner pulleys were not in line. Obviously, if you're going to have a serpentine belt over here, the tensioner has to be in line with all the pulleys so that the belt spins in a straight line. So let's move over to see what my tensioner looks like. Here's the tensioner I took off the vehicle. Obviously, I have the two pulleys taken off. I noticed that the pulley up top here wasn't in line with the second pulley. So what happened was this place was slightly bent inwards this way, and I thought to myself that if I could beat it out, but obviously I had that at the back of my mind that it could also break. So obviously it broke into two. Another issue I found was the point on this tensioner where the upper pulley mounted onto was cracked. Let me try to show you. Such hairline cracks could lead to disintegration and subsequent total failure. So upon seeing the crack around the edges of the slot right here, I knew the tensioner was definitely done. So I went right ahead to purchase a whole used unit. So if we look at this one, the two pulleys are definitely in a straight line, and this tensioner is definitely not bent at all. So let's go over to the vehicle and get this installed. You would observe that I have the bolt already in the middle of the pulley right there. So moving the power steering fluid reservoir out of the way, I'm able to rotate and get the tensioner in there. And then once it's in, I start off the two bolts by hand to ensure that I don't cross thread. I'll be installing the central pulley bolt first, hold it in place, and then I'll go right ahead to bolt on the second bolt. Now I have the tensioner fully tightened, so I'm going to check that the pulleys spin freely. That's the upper one right there. It sounds good and it runs smooth. The lower one also spins good and freely. And then looking at the alignment from up top, you can see that all the pulleys are aligned and the belt is going to run smooth, even though I'm yet to tighten the power steering pump. That was the issue with the serpentine belt tensioner. So I don't foresee any problems with the belt moving on forward, and the serpentine belt should last for a very long time without any issues. On to the next issue. The PCV valve for this engine is located right here. Here it is. It's mounted on with a 10mm bolt. It goes in that way. So while idling the engine earlier, I noticed some oil trickling down from here. So I took it out and tried to replace one of the O-rings. There's an O-ring supposed to be right here, and the second one still right there. It broke into two, so I got a used one also, in line with the budget theme of this build. So I'll be replacing that right now. Here's the replacement piece with the two O-rings. This is one O-ring right here, the second one down here. So I'm going to lubricate with some engine oil so that it slides in smooth before installing. So with the O-rings lubricated, I'm going to slide it in right now. Sure it goes in smooth. Yes, just like that. So right now it's in there. I really don't mind the pink color. That'll make me remember that there's something right there. And I think it breaks up the monotony of having black and silver all through. So next, I'll replace the 10mm bolts that I took out. Just like that. Always start off the threads by hand so I don't cross thread. You don't want to damage threads of your valve cover. So tighten down, not so tight, just snug. Yeah, that's good. So that's the PCV replaced. While walking around the top of the transmission with the air filter box removed, I noticed that the upper mount was broken. Here it is, all disintegrated. And upon further inspection, I realized the other mounts were also bad. So I went ahead to order replacements. Here they are, and I'll be swapping them out. So moving ahead, obviously I took out the bad mounts already. There they are. It's not so difficult of a job. Obviously you need to take off the driver front wheel using a jack and a piece of wood. Elevates the transmission a bit, and then you have 14mm bolts and nuts all through. And obviously you're going to need a pry bar a lot because you have some extremely tight spaces. So there it is, the replacement. This is a lower mount, one of the lower mounts. You have two lower mounts and then one upper one. Right now I'm about to do the upper transmission mount. I really thought this was going to be a smooth install because I wasn't going to be crouched under the car. But unfortunately for me, I was in for a rude awakening. I had taken my time to install the 3 bolts to the frame rail on the left side. I just noticed that it was taking longer than usual. I didn't remember taking so much time to take out the broken mount, but it was till I had installed the mount and was ready to move on to the next step when I realized that I had the wrong mount. The mount on the left is the mount I just bought. The one on the right is the one that is obviously bad. Unfortunately, I didn't notice this at market. The two mounts are different. I'm sure you can spot the difference. Well, moving ahead, let me show you the last major job on the car. Obviously, it's right under the car. It's the engine oil pan. It's leaking around the edges, and there are also some traces of a previous repair right there. And to make matters worse, it's not even the oil pan for this engine or transmission. Because if we look at the bolt holes that go to the transmission that I just pointed at right now, they don't line up. So it definitely needs to get replaced. Also, the torque converter cover right there is missing. Yeah, it definitely needs to be changed. Yeah, those bolt holes don't line up at all. So I already got a replacement pan, and I thought I would be able to get it replaced in this video, but obviously I don't want the video getting too long, so I will have to wait till the next video. So I believe with this, all major jobs will be complete and the car will be ready to start driving. It's been almost 2 months and I really can't wait to get this car on the road. Also, I don't have the exhaust on here. I got all the catalytic converters replaced, but I'm yet to install because I would obviously need to get the exhaust out of the way to get the oil pan replaced. So that's why we don't have any exhaust on there. So that's what's been going on. I really can't wait to drive this thing. I think it's going to be a blast and it's going to be all worth it, even though the work was quite much. But I guess that's what it is. You have to pay to play at times. Yeah, that's the nasty part right there. Definitely needs to be replaced. So back up top here, I got the serpentine bell reinstalled. Everything looks good. You can see our green harness for the knock sensor right there. I'm yet to reinstall the air conditioning pipe that was leaking, so I'll obviously get that done in the next video too. So fellas, this is what we're gonna call it quits in this video. Well, thanks for coming along this journey with me. Remember to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and share with your friends so that you can also benefit from it. Catch you in the next one. Stay safe. Bye.